I would like to welcome everyone who's here today to the joint Matsuyama and Ishikoku JALT presentation on the language of climate change for lower intermediate level students. Our speaker today is Marian Hara, who many of you will remember from our last July meeting that she did with Kenneth Parker and his daughter Sumire. This is a continuation of that meeting with more specific focus on actually going into the classroom and teaching climate change issues for lower level students. Marian has taught global studies for many years at a private school in Tokyo, and she's recently retired. But she's still not really retired. She's still very, very active in teaching students and doing workshops and in activism for climate change issues and all sorts of other issues too. Anyway, later in today's presentation, there will be a short guest appearance by Hinako Arao of 350 Japan. She's a climate activist, and she's very exciting and vibrant and interesting. And we have, at the moment, we have Srithin Tith, I'm not sure how you say your name, and her friend Dana hopefully will be able to join us in a little while, and they are going to interview Hinako. Here's Donna now, or maybe. Anyway, welcome to Matsuyama JALT's first September meeting in many years, and our second online meeting, or third online meeting. Anyway, Marian, I'm going to turn it over to you, so welcome.
Thank you very much. I want to thank, especially I want to thank Linda for giving me this opportunity. As a teacher, I've worked with this kind of material before, but having taken Al Gore's climate training last year, I've got a kind of renewed interest, and I think that the climate situation at the moment really does ask that teachers at all levels should find some way to have discussions about this. So I'm really happy that you're interested in taking part. And I'm very grateful to Linda and Matsuyama JALT for giving me this chance. Last time I presented here was my first online presentation. And I'm really excited today because I won't have to talk so much because you're going to do some of the stuff. And that makes it really fun for me. Before we actually get going, I wonder, Phil, are there any ground rules? Phil has been supporting so many JALT activities, and he's here with again today. So Phil, could you say hi and some background?
So hi, my name is Phil. I'm officially with JALT EGOT chapter. I'm the treasurer there, but I've done ever since we've done remote learning, I've been doing a lot of webinar workshops for a lot of the JALT chapters throughout Japan. Today I'm with Matsuyama, the great Matsuyama team, to help out with their meetings and just kind of be on the back end of stuff. So if you have any general questions about your Zoom or any issues or any problems, let me know and I will help you with that. So I'll just be in the background helping you guys out. So once again, welcome. Thank you, Matsuyama team, for letting me host your event today.
Okay. I forgot to introduce Davy Leslie and Angelo. I don't know how to say your last name, Angelo.
Angelo's fine.
Okay. And Donna is here now from Beppu. And so we also have Matsuyama chapter member officers Junko Yamamoto and Jae-hee Ryu are here today. So we will be acting as your breakout room hosts or whatever you want to call it. I think we're ready to begin today's presentation now.
Right.
So Marian, back to
Thank you very much. Thank you. When we talk about discussing the environment with lower level students, I think most people instantly would say, oh, it's too difficult. And this is the challenge. And this is what I worked with at high school. Usually this kind of activity would be in the second year of high school. My school had a 3-year program. Senior 1 and Senior 2 studied various topics to do with human rights, learning about the news, learning about the world, the global studies, a range of global studies issues. And in this final senior year, the top students only were in a special class called Global Studies 2, and they would do essays and presentations on a topic that they choose, and they're still doing it at quite a high level, I would say, for a high school, generally speaking. So the issue with these topics is always starts with the vocabulary. Because the topic is difficult, you need to know some difficult words. And as a teacher, I think what's important is combining relatively accessible language structures and complexity of language with these difficult topics. So you have on the screen there, paper number 1 is a vocabulary sheet. We're not going to test you on it now, but it's here as a resource. So as you'll see, there are 2 pages here. The first page is the vocabulary that students would need for the dialogues that we're about to do in pairs. And I would spend quite some time with this. I would use this before getting into the topics. I would get the students to understand that they will be able to cover this material if they know the vocabulary. And so they would train each other, they would quiz each other. We would have at start of the class a little, quiz program, quiz question or matching, and really trying to make sure not only that they know the meaning of the vocabulary, but also pronunciation practice. So quite intensive. So I would sort of go, everybody repeating climate change, average temperature, train, and then try by themselves, have a practice time, and teachers going around, people put their hands up if they want some help, and really working on the vocabulary before we get going. So you're all, pretty advanced, I would say. And so what I would like you to do is to look at document number 2. Now, this is called, the second document is called the dialogues. And as I was thinking how to do this, I thought, I want the students to be able to talk, not only reading and reading aloud, but actually as if they're having a conversation. And in the end, I made 2 conversations. And there are some reasons for that. The first conversation is focused on climate change. That's how the topic starts. And the second one is focused on global warming. And one person is asking questions, another person is giving information. So I've tried to make this pretty easy. But of course, one person is the knower and one person is the asker. And so when they do the second one, you're going to change over. So is everybody okay with the paper? Have you been able to download the paper so that you can see it? We're going to put you into breakout rooms and you're going to practice in a random pair. Phil will put everybody into a paired breakout room, and you can decide one person starts as in the first one, and then when you come to the second one, you're going to change over. When I timed this, they took about 5 minutes each, and I want you to go through the 2 dialogues. So this will start us off. Go through the 2 dialogues with your partner. You can help each other if there are any words that you don't understand, but basically pretend that you're a student. You've learned the vocabulary and now go through, and you know, I call this kaiwa gokko. It's like, okay, it's not your own real conversation, but you're playing at conversation. So Phil, if nobody has a problem with getting hold of the dialogues, I don't see any people saying help. Then could you please put everyone in a breakout room?
Perfect.
And you will have, you're going to have 12 minutes. And after that 12 minutes, we'll come back out and then we're going on to another activity, which is video.
Perfect. We have 8 rooms available, so we will throw everybody in there. Are we all set?
Yeah, if you happen to have 2 people, you can have 2 A's or 2 B's. That's
Perfect.
not a problem, really.
Everyone has a pair. So all right, let me throw everybody to pairs.
Have a good time being a student.
Good one. 12 minutes. All right, you're all by yourself.
Great. Well, that was good. Thank you. Much easier for me this time.
Feel free to go to, because you're a co-host, you can visit different rooms as you see fit.
Okay, I'll pop in and have a listen. Thanks very much.
Oki Beach. I'm not really at Oki Beach.
Oh, okay.
Tosashimizu.
Ah.
It's just around the corner. Yeah.
I see.
Okay. So we have a dialogue here.
A dialogue.
Yeah. The climate. Do you have this document number 2?
Okay. Let me see. Document 2. So,
Our climate crisis.
okay, just a moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have. So, okay, I'm looking at the dialogue document.
Our climate crisis. Yes.
Climate crisis. Okay.
Kiku no kiki.
Mm.
Okay, good. So one of us is supposed to be the asker and one of us is supposed to be the answerer. Which would you choose? Would you like to ask the question or answer?
Oh, I'd like to ask.
Okay.
So sorry, along with the document. Okay. A. I don't understand climate change. How is the climate changing?
Right. So the answer, first we have global warming. It means the average temperature is rising. The world is getting hotter year by year.
Yes. Right. Okay, I see. That happened a lot in Japan last year.
Yes, but some areas in the world don't get enough rain and some and suffer drought and forest fire.
That's right. Drought? Drought? Does that mean no rain?
Yes. There is no rain. People can grow enough food, and also the rising temperature mean polar ice is melting. Then the sea levels rise, so people in some islands will have to leave their home. We are seeing more climate refugee now.
She's not responding.
He's not responding and off the mute.
Okay.
Off the mute and turn on the video, but no response.
Never mind. Let's do this. Let's do it. I'll do it with you, okay? Let's just go through it. Do you want to do, do you have the papers? Did you?
Yes, I have paper vocabulary, part 1.
Do you have the vocabulary for the paper for the next one, which is the dialogues, paper number 2?
Oh, I'm sorry. I still don't have dialogue. I just have a vocabulary. So,
did you download?
just a minute. I can get from the chat.
Yeah, it should be in the chat. Have a look.
Just a minute.
Are you teaching online actually? Are you? Are you teaching online? Are you?
Yes. And the first semester, I taught my student through Zoom, on Zoom.
Yes.
So
I've gotten a little bit more adept because I know at least the basic tools, but that's not happening. I feel we're off task a little bit.
Shame on you guys. Shame on you.
No, we've already discussed the task.
Shame.
And it's
it's too complex for our students.
Yes.
We're thinking if we chunk it down and make it a little bit more information gap, or simplify the conversation, or make this into a reading, then it might work. But our students are like way lower than hers, I think.
I agree with that assessment. I think for the average English learner, it might be a little too dense.
We could take similar questions and maybe make it a little bit more simple, and then like put it into a snakes and ladders game board format. And you know,
I think that would be an excellent idea.
Yes, I agree with that.
Really complex concepts across, but instead of this long sentence, maybe make it into a multiple choice or something. Yeah. But I think this to get across the same concept, but and as a reading by themselves, maybe they could handle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
I would like to see some way to make it.
to ask really simple questions. You know, what is your family name? So
exactly. What's your major? Where do you live? Yeah, I have false beginners.
And non-majors, which is, I mean, I have mainly law students, so I think they will be actually very interested in the topic, but it's got to be a little bit simpler unless I'm giving it to them for reading.
Right.
It's 12 minutes are up. Do you want me to close all the rooms?
Yes, please.
Done.
Right. Is everybody out? Did you manage to get through the dialogues? Yes, everybody? Okay, there were some hiccups, but I think sometimes there's a problem with getting downloaded in the chat. You can see these, they're quite long for that level, I would say they're quite long. So of course you can organize this differently. You can make shorter dialogues. You can do different things with them. But what I wanted in these dialogues to include things like the students not understanding a word and asking what does so-and-so mean. And I wanted the students to experience both sides. So in some case, they are the expert. And in the other case, they're asking questions. I think that's kind of important. But as for how you do this, of course, it's very flexible because every teacher has to go according to what suits for their students. I'm not presenting materials here that I think are a definite answer because there is no such thing. Every teacher will have to organize in their own way. Linda is putting a file.
I just put up number 3. But I wanted to say that Susan and I were discussing how this dialogue could be taught for our very low-level students. And I was wondering if, Susan, you'd like to comment.
Oh, really?
You share your suggestions.
Okay, Susan, can we hear from you? Where is Susan?
Right, I'm just trying to figure out how to unmute. I got it. So yeah, I have very low students. They're non-majors, mostly law students. So I think they're very interested in the topic, but they don't have the vocabulary. They don't have the confidence. Most of them are not, maybe not very good in English, let's face it. But they're fairly mudgy. But I think they would maybe handle something like that as a reading or writing. With the vocabulary support, but as far as dialogue, they have trouble getting through very basic junior high type stuff. So I'm not seeing it. But sometimes they can handle more complex topics if it's shorter answers, shorter dialogue, especially maybe a little bit more of an information gap where they're actually having to like match the question to the answer or something like that. Because otherwise I think they would just get bogged down and just read straight through it without comprehending really, or making it into maybe a Sudoku type, board game where they have to answer the question in order to advance and someone has the answer to check them. So something like that.
Yeah, I think you can approach it in different ways. And what I would like to say is that you can start with the dialogue like this, and then you can, having read it through, you can then have some gap fills and different kinds of activities. You know, it's really up to you. That the order in which you do is up to you. But I think, do you agree with me, Susan, that it's good to teach a lot of the vocabulary first?
Oh, yeah.
You know, the vocabulary has to come first, because otherwise you're really having a hard time. Although some teachers would also present a kind of bilingual text, and that's another option, that you have even Japanese on one side, English on the other side, or that you have the difficult words that are underlined with Japanese as a support as you go through it. So certainly you can do it in different ways, but my personal feeling is that it's nice to have them doing something with dialogue, and that this is not just a topic on paper. I think that's my basic kind of feeling. So the question is how, you know, you can have individual questions. And in the classroom, what I would sometimes do with something like this is each person has the answer for one question, for example.
Yes, exactly.
And then you're doing a melee type of activity where you run and the kids are active. They're going around the room asking different people different questions. And that's another way you can do some of this. But I did want it to be a dialogue so that there's a sort of response like, oh, I see, and oh, that sounds bad. Because these are things that we want to feed in anyway as conversational skills, as it were. So just looking at the time, does anybody at this stage have any questions or points or suggestions that they'd like to add at this stage? Right.
Marty has a question.
Okay, Maddie.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you what ppm stands for.
Parts per million.
Parts per million.
Parts per million.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's.
Angela was right. Yeah, I really didn't know this word.
Yeah, that's a good thing of working in a pair. You learn things from your partner.
But what we both couldn't figure out is what's the million? Is that oxygen atoms or the air or?
Sorry, parts per million in the air.
Yeah.
So at the moment, yeah, in that dialogue, the CO2 in the atmosphere is 400 parts per million in the air, and that's incredibly high. That's part of our.
So that would include oxygen, nitrogen, all the other molecules that are in the air. CO2 is that much of it.
Yes. And actually in May, they said that it was 415 last year at one point, and this year it's 417 in May. And the measurements come from the top of, in Hawaii, is it called the Al Moana? Does somebody know? Yeah, that's where these measurements come from. And that's where Keeling did his work, which is very important basic work that addresses this issue. So, any other questions? Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
So, you know, there are things in this that, for example, sometimes the teacher doesn't know. And in a lot of the topics that I've taught in global studies, that's also the question. We would study things like world religions, and you're doing as much learning as the students are. And learning together, and sometimes my students would go and research something for an essay, and I would learn a heck of a lot from them. So yeah, that's part of this whole process, I guess. What I wanted to talk about next is how we get into this topic, and I'm going to share some video. Now for me, you know, how do you get the kids interested? Because you've got, you know, Japanese students are not always very, very alert to social issues and environmental issues, although they may be complaining that it's really hot in summer and so on, but they, you know, they're not really ready to go with being active about it. So it's important to kind of give them some motivation. And Greta Thunberg, who I think you all know, the Swedish student who refused to go to school because she was so upset that nobody is solving this problem, she has become very famous. And even some of my high school students knew about her. Although I have to say, in January, I presented at my old school, and I was really sad to see that there were quite a lot of students who hadn't even heard of Greta. The science students knew her, but not everybody. So showing them the story of Greta and how this young girl has started a kind of movement and got young people moving is quite a helpful thing, I think, to show them that young people are doing things in other places. And also the good thing is that there's an awful lot of video material on Greta. And another great thing about Greta is that her language is relatively, because she's not a native speaker of English, and people say that she's tutored by her father, which may well be true, but her English is quite easy to catch. So I'm going to show you a couple of video clips of Greta. And then I'm going to ask you to go back in a breakout room in groups of 3 or maybe 4 and talk about how you would introduce this topic to your students. I mean, do you come into school one day and just say, okay, we're going to talk about global warming. We're going to talk about the climate. You know, it's important to find ways to get them really interested. And so Greta's story is a great way of doing that. There's also a lot of information in Japanese. There's a lot on YouTube. So when I use video in high school, I would say I try to keep it within 5 minutes or maximum about 10, depending what you're doing with it. Another thing that I did in my high school classes is sometimes I would show them videos in Japanese. Some people disagree with that, but I want them to understand what the issue is. And then if they see something in Japanese, we can talk about it in English. So the first video is only in English. I think, yes, Linda has shared paper number 3. What I did was to help everybody, I did a transcription of both of these videos. The first one is only in English, and so I took a translation from DeepL, and maybe you would like to look at that. So I'm going to share the first one, which is within 2 minutes. It's only 1 minute and 56 seconds. Okay. It's very short. So yes, if you can look at the paper, you don't have to have.
Are you sharing your screen?
Sharing it now.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
For way too long, the politicians and the people in power have gotten away with not doing anything to fight the climate crisis. But we will make sure that they will not get away with it any longer. And we are striking because we have done our homework and they have not. Some say that we are fighting for our future. But we are not fighting for our future. We are fighting for everyone's future. And we will not stop until we are done. Thank you. We need to focus every inch of our being on climate change. Because if we fail to do so, then all our achievements and progress have been for nothing. And if you still say that we are wasting valuable lesson time, then let me remind you that our political leaders have wasted decades through denial and inaction. If I were in charge, I would tell the truth, the emergency of the situation and what we need to do and what we need to do to try to save what can be saved, Because most people I talk to, they don't have even the basic knowledge about the climate crisis. They don't know what the Keeling curve is. They don't know what the albedo effect is, and that is absurd that people don't know those things.
Right. Everybody okay?
Yes, that was very interesting. Thank you.
Now, I put the text of it, and it's something that you can, in your discussion after you see the second one, I'm wondering what you would think of both of these videos. The second one is a speech. It doesn't show her in action, but this one shows her what has been happening as this girl has gathered other young people around her. And increasingly last year, there were huge numbers coming out on the street. And really that has all been a result of Greta's very public speeches and actions. So, and she's been very interesting because she did things like refusing to fly. And so her own actions are things that are good to have discussion about. What the students think about her refusing to go to school or refusing to fly. In her own family, she actually made her mother change her career. Her mother's an opera singer, and her mother made the decision that she would no longer fly to perform in other places, but she would only work in Sweden or in places that she could reach by train or that kind of transport. So she's a very interesting case. Now, we have one more video. If you just give me a minute here, I'll put it up here. Okay, are you ready for number 2? Everybody okay? Here we go. Hold on.
You say you love your children above all else, and yet you're stealing their future in front of their very eyes. You only talk about moving forward with the same bad ideas that got us into this mess, even when the only sensible thing to do is pull the emergency brake. You are not mature enough to tell it like it is. Even that burden you leave to us children. Our civilization is being sacrificed for the opportunity of a very small number of people to continue making enormous amounts of money. Our biosphere is being sacrificed so that rich people in countries like mine can live in luxury. It is the sufferings of the many which pay for the luxuries of the few. The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there still was time to act. Until you start focusing on what needs to be done rather than what is politically possible, there is no hope. We cannot solve a crisis without treating it as a crisis. We need to keep the fossil fuels in the ground, and we need to focus on equity. And if solutions within this system are so impossible to find, then maybe we should change the system itself. We have not come here to beg world leaders to care. You have ignored us in the past, and you will ignore us again. You have run out of excuses, and we are running out of time. We have come here to let you know that change is coming, whether you like it or not. The real power belongs to the people. Thank you.
Okay, right. Did everybody, yes, you've seen 2 videos now. We have the script of both of the videos in the chat. So, you can look at the text. There's so many things that you can do with this. But I think how you might use this yourself, what you think of it as a teaching material, how you might address her story, or if you think that now we've heard enough about Greta, there is another way to do this. You may have some other idea. So my question is, how do you want to engage students in this topic? I've given you 2 videos as examples, but I'm sure that you have other ideas. You may have done other things yourselves. So, oh, I'm sorry, Mary. Yes, I enlarged the screen. I'm sorry. Phil, could you please put us into breakout rooms now?
Yep. Do you want the same members or different?
No, because that was a pair, and this is going to be a group of 3 or 4.
Perfect.
So apart from you and myself, that would be 4 groups of 4, perhaps?
Groups of 4? I can do groups of 4. Perfect.
Yeah, so
Done.
why don't you take this and just a general thing about how you would get into this topic. Would you use this video? How might you use it? What would you have the students do? And what kind of help you would give them? Because I think in some cases the students do need some help. If you look at the text, I've underlined some of the difficult language in this in these videos. Some of it's very easy, and there are a lot of different things you can do. So off to have a think. We're going to give you for discussion time about 12 minutes. And then when we come back, I would like each group to share some of what you were discussing, any good ideas or any questions that you have. So each group can take a couple of minutes to share what you discussed. So please choose somebody to, take a memo, choose somebody at some point, choose somebody to share what you've discussed in your group. Everyone okay with that? Any questions?
No.
Good.
All right. I'll get everybody all started. Please enjoy yourself.
Good. Have a great discussion, and I'll drop in and say hi. Thank you.
Yeah, so should I stop share and we can check it individually?
No, if you go to the top of your screen, there's a green box. You are viewing Donnelly's screen. And then to the right of that, there's a white 2 words, view options, and an arrow. Go down the arrow.
Breakout room. So here I am. I'm Davey. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
And there's one more, Phil.
Phil is monitoring everybody. So
Okay.
He's in the background.
So, anybody else's idea?
Anybody else? Well, for me, so I have such a wide variety of students, and from every different department. So it really depends on the class composition, how I would go about introducing this topic. So I have science students who know a lot about this already. And then I have humanities students who know quite a bit less. So one thing I'll do is I'll start, I taught a global citizens class for many, many years. And what I did was at the beginning of the semester, I did a poll and asked students to identify what they think are the most important global issues. And invariably, climate change shows up at the top of the list. So it was really simple to introduce the topic. But again, it just depends on the students you get. Every time I walk into the beginning of the semester, I'm not really sure exactly what I'm going to be doing because it depends on the people in the room. So how about, what is other people's experience?
Hello, Junko here. Well, I have very little idea on what I could do, but as Susan suggested, my students are pretty low in their maybe English levels and also maybe social kind of awareness. So I think it's really a good idea to start with the questions she suggested, like, have you heard of Greta? Or, maybe I need to start from there and gradually see what I can do with them, because I have very little idea right now. So
actually, I did this once, just once, back when we were in the classroom. When was that? Last year. So it worked fairly well. Just a couple basic questions: who is Greta? Why is she famous? And I actually asked maybe three environmental activists, Greta, and then I chose Wangari Maathai, who most of them had in their kyokasho. So they were a little bit familiar with her, the woman from Kenya who planted lots of trees, and then Al Gore. And I asked, who are these people? Have you ever heard of them? Why are they famous, or what have they done? And then it was like a treasure hunt. If they didn't know, they asked their partners in a group. And if they didn't know, then the next step is to look it up, find some basic information, and try to do it fast. So they have to write the answer on the board. So easy answers go on the board fast. So the longer they wait, then the more difficult their answer has to become. So they were able to come up with some good answers right away. And then of course I could correct or erase the bad answers or add in additional information and go from there. Then I showed them a similar video, and for my students anyway, the Nihongo, the Japanese subtitle, I think is very helpful. They can get some of that. But I have very basic, they're not English majors, low-level English, and also not scientists and not environmental activists.
I would help translation, give some translation material for them to be able to handle, to construct very simple sentence in English.
Yeah.
But they can come back without any answers. And the second way is to just prepare translation, bilingual translation, English and Japanese as a material before seeing the video, and introduce vocabulary and have them just make a stock of very small number of vocabulary, like 5 to 10, so we can focus on issue in what Greta has been trying to say or has been trying to advocate.
Great! Wow.
As much as I have now.
Fantastic! Yeah.
I'm not so strong in this kind of area, so.
Wow, sounds good to me. I really do feel, I always use of bilingual materials means that they've got the Japanese there to reassure them that they really do understand, and then they can be focusing on the English.
Right.
And that works a lot. Yes.
Yes.
Tomomi?
Hello. For lower level class, I'd like to show the video in English, but I'd like to add some Japanese explanation on the video. And after that, I'd like to student to discuss in a group of 4 or 5 students, and I'd like to allow them to use Japanese during the discussion, because for lower level student to express their opinion in English is very difficult. So and I'd like to give them a piece of paper, so maybe a kind of large paper, and I'd like them to write down some opinions in English, helping each other. And after that, I'd like them to make a very small presentation in English. Maybe it's a very simple sentence, a couple of opinions on the paper, and in front of the class, all of the group members present their opinion in front of the audience. That's my idea.
Good, good. I'm going to leave your group, so can you continue? Maybe you've got more things to say there, everybody. And remember, somebody please present when we come back together again. I think you've got lots of great ideas. Thank you. Bye.
TED Talk or YouTube, like world leaders say, like Obama or many other world leader, and then I try to act as them. So I take note. So I read the script, but I try to act as like how they gonna say like that. So it's really improved. It's improved like vocabulary and also my confidence in public speaking also. Yes.
Well, it's good to hear that it was so effective with you. You can also have them create like a panel discussion and have each student address the world leaders separately and have each one have a role that they would play or a different idea that they would introduce.
When I've taught Greta, I usually ask the students to try and find out a little bit about her beforehand. And then before showing her video, I kind of ask them the questions to kind of get the points about how young she is and the amazing speeches she's done to people and why she started. And I usually find, you know, when they know how young she is, that my students are really motivated to listen to her. Because they compare it, you know, to themselves and what they're doing and, you know, what she's doing, and that makes them think. A fun thing that I've done is I've found pictures of some of the very interesting placards, signs that are used at climate demonstrations, like there is no planet B, and I can't think of others at the moment, but there are some very interesting signs and interesting ways of using English. And I go through the meaning of a few and then ask them to make some signs, you know, what they would like to show, the things that they are worried about. You know, are they worried about the Amazon forests, or are they worried about what is happening closer to home in, well, in my case, Japan, and things like that.
Linda, hi. Everyone's coming back now.
I need to get a screenshot of everybody first. Let me see if I can get a screenshot of everybody.
Oh, unmute everybody, yes. And then we can...
There we go.
Right, so can we go from each room in turn? A couple of minutes just to give you know, some idea of some points that you came up with in each discussion. So breakout room 1 was actually, Linda, is with the room that we started in.
Yes, and we wanted each person to introduce their different ideas.
Yes.
So Yoshie, do you want to begin? You're muted.
We can only take a couple of minutes for each group, so let's make it
okay.
kind of speedy. Yes.
Okay. So for my student and listening to the Greta's speech is, I think in terms of understanding, and they can understand why she is talking. But just before the bilingual bilingual vocabulary list is very useful. But as for the bilingual vocabulary list, and pronunciation is the key, I think. If they can understand pronunciation, they can listen very well and understand the Japanese version and English version. So when it comes to the bilingual vocabulary list, I really value the pronunciation and for the understanding. But just after listening to the Greta's speech, and just after that, make them discuss, and I think it's very difficult to discuss, and because probably they need script for her speech. And so in my it's my idea, and I add another script, and which is concerned with the environmental problems. Then they can add their knowledge. So I value, in this sense, I value the input of the issue. Then after comprehension, and I make them have a micro debate, and so that they have a lot of opportunity to speak out what they learned, and they can add their opinions, And it's a kind of consciousness raising on the issue. So micro debate, affirmative side and negative side, and I set up a judge, then rotate and negative and judge, and it's about a 6 to 7 minutes debate, then rotate their roles, and so that they have a lot of opportunity to speak out, and they have to stand on the affirmative side sometimes, and sometimes they have to stand in the negative side. So it's a very good opportunity for the critical thinking. So this is the kind of my idea.
That sounds actually quite challenging to me to get to.
Yeah.
For Japanese lower level, so it does depend very much. Even if you say, you know, lower intermediate, there's a range, and I think that's the judgment every teacher has to make. But I think if you give them support, of course, and I absolutely agree with you about the pronunciation. I think that's essential that they, because they're not going to be able to listen to it. That's why the vocabulary, in my mind, comes first. Then they're going to catch words and, oh, I know that word. And even one thing that some people do is listen to it with no vision, and pick out words that you hear. It's a very nice activity. Just listen to a video and catch the words that you hear, even without having any subtitles. So thank you. Yes, who's going to go next? This was group number 1 or 2? Linda?
Sripin and Dana had really interesting points, and Francis, can you say your points more quickly?
Okay, sure. I will want to say my point. So I think her level of English is good for Japanese student, intermediate level. So I think they can learn by watching the video, and after watching the video, we have discussion about that. So let's say we watch a video about climate change, about her speech about climate change. So we will discuss about the problem of climate change, and then try to talk about what should we do, like the solutions for that. So this will first improve their listening skills and critical thinking as well, and also they can learn a lot of vocabulary from related to climate change. So I think yes.
Right, thank you.
And Sripin.
Yeah, for me, just like Dana have said, which is the Krita pronunciation is quite understandable. So it poses quite easier for intermediate English learning students to understand her, as well as teacher can provide them sheets of paper that having her speech, so that a student can follow her speech. So they also can keeping track with the video, and as well as to understand clearly when they can hear the word and see the word. Yes, thank you.
Oh, I like that idea. And they could even do shadowing of her speech. Lovely.
Yes, and one of the things, you could have a role play at the end, and students imagine, what would you say in Greta's place if you were speaking to world leaders? And Francis, you had a point.
I ask my students to find out as much as they can about Greta before I do a Greta lesson, because they're pretty amazed when they find out how old she is. And then they're really motivated when they see the video and see what a powerful speaker she is. And something that the students have enjoyed as a follow-up activity, I start with Greta's original sign, the School Strike for Climate sign. And then I show some pictures of some other interesting signs that have been carried at climate marches. And some of them are very linguistically interesting. And I go through just a few of those. And then I ask the students to make their own slogans for signs that they would carry about the things that they care about, depending on their interests. If they're worried about the forests in the Amazon, or if they're worried about things closer to home in Japan, what's happening in Japan, and so on.
Yeah, catching the slogans from the video. I love that idea because there are many of them, and if you stop the video, they can catch. Great. Yeah. Okay. So can we have group 3, please? Who's going to?
Yeah, that was so Susan and Mari and Jai.
Okay.
Yeah, and we had a lot of really interesting ideas, practical and concrete suggestions. So could I ask group 3 members to kind of give a quick, like the highlights of their suggestions, please?
Debbie, maybe you can do it yourself.
Okay, so I didn't hear the beginning of when Susan's discussions because I joined a little bit later because I was in a different breakout room. But what I think we were talking about is having students generate questions. So in some sense that the topic becomes a bit more student-centric and building from the student's own knowledge and the things that they want to know and to make personal connections. And Jay, he made a very interesting point that his students who are junior high school students are essentially Greta's peers. And so for them to feel like she's part of their generation is really an important thing to do.
Anything else from Mari? Susan? No? Okay, we better watch the time. I think group number 4, so Angelo, can you?
Yeah, I was gonna wrap up for our group. So I was with Yoko and Tomomi and Mimako. We had a good discussion. I think a lot of common points. I think our kind of context was having lower level students a lot of the time. And so we thought about 2 things, supporting the understanding before we started, like having bilingual materials and vocabulary and kind of preview and review activities that will allow students to have a base of understanding, to understand about Greta and what she's doing. And then we talked about the importance of having some time for opinion formation. Marian also dropped in and made a point that students sometimes aren't used to giving their opinion and might be kind of hesitant to do that. So we talked about having a group discussion in both languages, depending on students' levels, English or Japanese, to get them talkative and forming their opinion. And hopefully make students comfortable to express their opinion, whether as a presentation or something, or there was also the idea of providing them with different opinion statements about the topics or things in the video, and they choose an opinion, and so that gets them started to have an opinion about that. And finally, to the point where students can share their opinions to the other students, and they get like a group discussion and ideas and things like that. So yeah, that was us.
It's interesting for me hearing everyone's opinions that, how can I say, to present a dialogue like that straight off would be really difficult for them to follow. But if students have done some kind of activities of their own around the problem and then read through a dialogue, that might make a lot more sense to them, or that you could take some of the questions from the dialogue, take some questions then, and see how much they can actually come up with answers. Why is global? I want them to understand the cause and effect. It's not just to criticize the governments and complain, but also to know what's going on, you know, to know some of the facts about what is the cause. And there are some important points that are included in there, so then you can pull some of those out, I think, and direct your students' attention to them, perhaps. Now, how are we doing for time? Absolutely perfect time, you know. I'm amazed. Phil, we're gonna go into another breakout room.
I've just uploaded the file number 5. I'm not sure if it's time to do that or not.
What we need now is number 4.
Okay, I will upload that again in case it's not available to people.
Number 5 has some photographs. When you read through this, this is also a kind of made a presentation with looking at 3 different topics. I'll tell you why, because last month when we presented, I presented with Kenneth at Matsuyama JALT as well. He was concerned to think about Japan, that it's important for the students to know about the whole world, but what are some points that are relevant for Japan? And so there are 3 groups here. There's going to be A and B and C. And I think you will fall quite neatly into groups of 4. Perhaps you can put us, Phil, into groups where from the beginning, Linda and Davy are both in a group.
Yep, let me
Angelo,
pull that
different
there.
groups.
That should just about do it.
Let's see here. 3 rooms manually.
And if you can look at the solutions paper, you'll either be A or B or C. So if you're in group number 1, as you go into the group, if you're in group number 1, then you're A. If you're in group number 2, you're B. And if you're in group number 3, you're C. How about that, Phil?
Perfect. Let me get that room.
So can you explain about changing their, adding that to their name?
Yep. So if everyone can click on their names in the participants section there, there should be, if you right click, it says rename. Please go ahead and type in your letter that I will be assigning you.
Once you're in your room.
Yeah, I'm sorry, once you're in your room.
Once you're in your room, if you're in 1, then it's A, and put a big A in the front of your name.
All right.
How do they do that? Where do they click to find that?
Click on your name.
Yep. And then you'll right click.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let me assign random people to different rooms. 1 second here.
Yep.
And somebody has just
Can I
joined.
explain, when you're in there, just read. You can divide it among the 4 of you. And it says there sometimes, look at this photograph. Those photographs are in document number 5, and we don't need to worry about it, but I produced some photographs, but
so for the person who has just joined, please download from the chat document number 4 to use in the groups. Okay.
Right. So when you're in your room, you're either A or B or C.
Okay. We're all set here. How long would you like this for?
So this one should be 10 minutes.
Roger that.
Thank you.
All right. Everything's all assigned. We're ready to go. Please make sure once you check the rooms, check the letter, and then please rename yourself. If you need help, I'll be able to come in and assist as well.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
So
it's the one which starts with A, large A, capital A.
Yes.
So we're talking about solution. Okay.
I'm going to talk about energy. So the big problem with global warming comes from fossil fuels, as we studied, because fossil fuels can cause high CO2 emissions. We must cut our CO2 emissions by 50% within 10 years. In Japan, we are still using too much coal and oil. Changing to renewable energy is essential. Do you want me to read the rest of this or just read it silently?
My idea was that people would read it aloud just to get a feel for it.
Okay. Would somebody like to read the next paragraph?
Yeah, you see, I probably wouldn't do that either. If I had the script, maybe I'd give them a sample presentation someone else had done. And here's an example of a presentation. Now choose a different topic.
Or I might give them an outline of the information and turn this information into English sentences or something.
This is already done for them.
Yep.
And then all they have to do is memorize.
So instead of memorizing, maybe we can suggest the students to personalize some language, some of the vocabulary. They make some changes so that'll be that it feel natural for them to give a speech, because when giving a speech, it's important for the students to use a vocabulary they're already familiar with and you know, they feel comfortable with.
Yeah, so the underlying terms, maybe you could say, please include these, use vocabulary.
Yeah, include these key words and phrases. And, yeah.
And using the word count as an approximate of how long they should be speaking or something.
So in my case, I made a useful list for making a presentation and how to read and how to so-called discourse markers first, second, and last closing remarks. And thank you for listening and thank you for your kind attention. And I also asked them to write the mind map. Mind map. And when they write the mind map and the center at the topics, then and the subtopics, then details. So students need to write, needed to read the passage, then and try to organize how to make a presentation.
Talking about solutions, and it's number C. We will talk about trees. Our life on Earth depends on trees. I'm gonna share my screen too, so you can see that, Yoko, a little. Our life on Earth depends on trees in many ways. We use trees for wood, for fruit and nuts, to make paper and as fuel. Trees also give us shade. Most of all, trees absorb CO2 in a big way. We need to grow more trees everywhere.
Trees and
anyone? Yeah, go for it.
trees and forests are an important way to take out carbon from the atmosphere. So we must think before we cut them. Tree planting activities are important all over the world. Some forests burn easily after warm, dry weather, like in Australia and North America. But in humid Japan, trees grow well.
Our cities especially need trees to keep the temperature down. Recently, more trees are being cut down in cities. Tokyo and Yokohama plan to plant more trees, but this is going too slowly. Rooftop gardens also make the air cooler. Green curtains help too. They're easy to grow. Another important project is rewilding.
Shall I read?
Yeah, go for it.
Rewilding means leaving more untouched green areas in a countryside and letting more trees grow. Some groups are giving solar cooking stoves to poor countries. Then the people don't need to cut so many trees for fuel. Finally, we must protect forests to save animals and other species. Our forests are a common treasure.
Thank you very much.
And this group presentation, it will be included in.
Are you teaching at the university?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so because it's really perfect for university classes. Okay.
Yeah, if I was teaching junior high again, I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe if I had a junior high class, maybe just getting the students to actually speak this text, as if they understood, if they could understand what it means, getting them to speak this text would be a sufficient challenge. But at a university, they need to do a lot more than that. Yeah.
But I'm always wondering, and when it comes to the comprehension, so I gave them the Japanese version of the English script.
Right.
But what they are doing in the class is, and not in Japanese, and the comprehension is not important, I always said, but they, in their high school days and junior high days, and the comprehension is the 80% of the classroom activity. Just from English to translate, put into Japanese is what they did. And while they are in junior and senior high. So beforehand, I give them the script in Japanese, and so that they can comprehend beforehand and before starting the class. Then they are supposed to write the mind map in English and exchange opinions in English. So, but I don't know if it is good or not, because some students just regard the English class is translating the English version into Japanese. So.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think everyone's back. Well, great, thank you. I hope you enjoyed looking at that as some example of things that you might say in a Japanese context, things that you might use in some way in your own teaching. I'm going to ask Phil to share this one more discussion where we'll have a little bit more time, and there are 4 topics that you can choose from.
Do we need to put anything in the chat?
Yeah, so for the next step, I want to talk about, while Phil is doing that, I want to talk about the documents number 5, 6, and 7 are all photographs.
Okay, I will put them up right now.
We had to put them, we couldn't put them all together. They were too heavy. And then number 8 is the resources that I want to mention. So if you could also put up number 8, that would be great. And while you're doing that, Phil, can the people click themselves on this at the bottom for voting?
Yep, I can put it on right now so I can launch the polling. So everyone, if you can look at your screens there, there's a poll question with 4 different answers. Please choose one.
And we're going to discuss on this topic, whichever one you find most interesting. So please choose. Oh, people are interested in number 3. So basically you're choosing a discussion topic for the final discussion. 2 of these are about how we address the issues, and 2 of them are more to do with moving from the class to things outside the classroom, really, in terms of lifestyle or being active. Looks like we have 2.
It's interesting how the choices are going. So
yeah, it's interesting to watch people's opinions.
No one has chosen to discuss how do we gather momentum in society and in class to make helpful lifestyle changes.
But it is something that may come up in your class, but these are the things that people are most interested in.
Right, right.
I'm going to close the polls. I think we got
Okay.
over 70%. So the rest of the people can see what's going on here.
Okay, I'm happy to join with number 4 for discussion. But I don't know if any of the other, other hosts want to come in there.
Yeah,
for number 1 and 3 for 4 for number 3 and 3 for number 1, then we can join that one. Maybe you too, Linda.
Yeah, I need to be in number 4.
Me too. It's been a topic this week. So we haven't yet had our guest arriving, but before, if I could just explain to you the other documents that I've shared, I wanted to produce some resources or some examples of useful resources. So basically, there are 3 sets of photographs, and the first ones are just photographs that are mentioned in those solution little mini presentations. Because when students are talking, whether they prepare something themselves or you give them a script and you give them something it's very helpful to be holding something. It's very helpful to have visuals so that you are not the focus of all the attention. And of course, the visuals are very helpful in explaining what you're talking about. So of course, you can have your students make lots of visuals. Although I do think that if they get too intent on the visuals, sometimes they're not paying enough attention to just saying what they have to say. So that's a judgment. For number 6, I was interested in the idea of doing some creative writing. So I've shared 6 pictures in there. That this is for you to take away with you. I like the idea of trying to step into somebody's shoes. And these are pictures from people who, for example, have no water. Their lake has dried up, or they have to go and dig very deep to get water, or they've suffered a typhoon, or they're living in a place where the sea is going to encroach. And my idea is that you might do a creative writing exercise where you ask the student to imagine, this is me. And of course, it's easier if it's a Japanese topic, perhaps. If one of those pictures is somebody being airlifted from their home in Kurashiki 2 years ago. I think that's something that you can think of yourself, but using creative writing sometimes is a way of stepping into somebody else's shoes and imagining what it might be like to go through this experience. Because, you know, when we live in, like I'm in Tokyo and we're very well protected here. We haven't been badly hit by any of the typhoons. We have a very good water system that protects us, but this is not true everywhere. So having them focus on what might it be like to really suffer in the future. And because of this question of how global warming and the climate crisis can make us very depressed, it can make us very gloomy about the future. And so I shared in number 7 on one of the websites, which is on the last paper of resources. These are positive things to show that some countries have achieved great things. For example, my country, Scotland, is completely free of coal. We are 100% renewable. And there are other countries which are doing likewise. And so sharing some of these is nice. It's also a way of pointing out that Japan, what do we want Japan to boast about? It's good to have some good news to share. So that's in number 7. So finally, in the final paper, I have shared the addresses of some of these videos. I've shared some information that you might hear from Hinako about Day of Action. Here she's coming in now. And there's also a wonderful project about contacting your local legislators. And I'd love it if you could read about that and share this idea with people. On the BBC News this week, there was an amazing and very, very alarming picture of the permafrost in Siberia, which is very close to Japan. So please look through these resources. I hope you find something useful there. And I think that we're just about ready to welcome our guest. Here she is. So I'm going to welcome Hinako, ask her to introduce herself, and then it'll be over to our 2 student people here to ask her some questions.
I'm here.
Hinako, it's so good
Marian.
to see you. Hi. How was your event? How did it finish?
I just finished 30 seconds ago.
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you before she starts, Hinako has just been training young climate leaders around Asia, and she's going to tell us about that. So Hinako, we have 2 students here who are going to ask you some questions. There's Dana, maybe you can see if you look up on the screen. Dana there is studying down in Kyushu, and her friend, where is she? Srapin in the next page, she's actually checking in from Cambodia. So, Hinako, please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit, and then these 2 guys are going to ask you some questions.
Okay. Hi everyone, thank you for having me here, Marian. Hi Francis, hi Mary, hi Dana. Marian, thank you for inviting me. I was really looking forward to coming here today. My name is Hinako and I was born in Hiroshima, raised in kind of everywhere in Japan, and I did my undergraduate degree in the States. And then I was working as an actress in USA, but throughout my teens and 20s, I did volunteering for conservation, like for nature conservation. And also I was lucky enough to be surrounded by great activists in the States. So when I came back to Japan, after a little while, I started to work for 350.org Japan. 350 is an international environmental NGO committed to solve this climate crisis by people power. So we do a lot of movement building because we have witnessed that world leaders weren't really good at solving this somehow. So we think like we need a strong global grassroots movement. And as you know, Japan doesn't have the best culture around grassroots movement, but 350 Japan has been, along with other partners, have been like trying to make localize grassroots movement. What kind of movement we should build so that many Japanese people can actually participate. So that's what we've been doing.
Great, that was a lovely introduction. Dana and Sripin, over to you.
I will start first. So hello, Hinako, nice to meet you. I'm Dana. So I'm a sophomore majoring in international relations and peace study from Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University.
Wow, international studies.
Yes.
That sounds super interesting.
Good afternoon, I'm Pin. I'm from Cambodia and we are really glad to see you and thank you, Hinako, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Very nice meeting you too.
So since you already introduced yourself and your background related to the environment, so I want to discuss about 350 Japan. So what is the meaning of 350?
So have you ever heard of the word parts per million?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? Can you tell us what it is?
I think it is about the molecules like carbon dioxide that are inside. How is it related to like 300 parts per million of some things in the air, something like that?
Yeah, exactly. So parts per million is a unit to measure how much CO2, carbon dioxide, CO2 is in the air. And if it's like around 350 is a great amount of CO2 in the air, with which like people, human beings and plants and animals and oceans, and everything can be in like, kind of healthy ecosystem, can be like, can be sustained. Where right now it's like it's hitting way over 400. So try to have, as an organization, we have one goal, which is to reduce the CO2 so that we can have sustainable and also just society for everyone, every group of human beings. Yeah, so that's the behind. But sometimes it's like, I have other things like, so 350 people from 350, they work 350 days to fight climate change, and then 15 days they rest, like something like that. And I think it's true, pretty much true. But yeah, but thank you for asking.
Hidako, I also saw your video in the Japan Times related to a zero waste lifestyle, right? Cambodia waste management also. I do agree that we cannot achieve 100% on our own, but need to contribute for everyone and for the government. So what are your challenges to bring this issue into the attention in Japan society?
Can you say the last part again? Like, so we cannot achieve 100%. After that, I missed it. Sorry.
I mean that we do agree that we cannot achieve 100% on our own by the zero waste lifestyle, which means that the meaning of zero waste lifestyle is not just we completely abandon all the plastic, but we cut it down as much as possible, right? So can you, so what are the challenges to bring this issue into the attention in Japan society? As we see that when we enter the supermarket in Japan, we can see most of the stuff are packaging in the plastic plastic. So what are your challenging and bring the issue toward the Japan society?
I think like a challenge is like there are some people like us who are interested in these like environmental problems, like so climate change or plastic issues, but there are a lot of people who are not interested, or a lot of people who are not informed. There are many people that if they are informed, they would love to contribute to positive change, but just not informed. So the challenge is like first, it's not like mass media. It's not working in a way that like in some of the it's working in some of the countries. Many people don't know about the plastic issue. It's such a serious problem, or climate change is such a serious problem, because we don't read it on the major newspapers as often as some of the other countries that already kind of banned like a single-use plastic, for example. So that's the challenge, I think. Another thing is like even within the climate movement or within zero waste community, a lot of like, you know, people who are like us think that individual personal lifestyle change is the answer. But according to social science and according to like looking at other changes, actually system needs to change, and we have, it's important. Like I love doing zero waste, you know, I love thinking how I can reduce waste, and I like it and I do them. But if I really want to change it, I need to work with other people to change the system. For example, now I'm very like too busy with climate change, working around climate change issues. But if I didn't have that, maybe I could do with my friends and like, have a meeting with people who are living in this Setagayaku, and then just like, you know, study like who is the decision makers, who can make the rules about plastic in my like Setagaya area, and then try to talk to them and trying to increase the people by doing study sessions or movie screenings, so that I can have more people to think about this issue. So these are the activities that needed. But a lot of us still think that if we cut down a little bit of like, you know, wasteful way of using energy, or if we don't use plastic bag, the world will change. And it's lifestyle changes are very important and powerful, but not enough to change the system quick enough to avoid very bad situation otherwise can happen with, especially with the climate change. So sorry, I talked a lot. Did I answer your question?
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So waste management, actually it's not only the problem in Japan, but it's also problem in anywhere around the world. Also in Cambodia, we have problem with waste management. Also, for example, we don't really separate our garbage. Yeah, most people, local people, don't really understand like how to do it, and they don't really understand like what is the impacts of waste. So in like the statistics, like the recent statistic in 2017, so the amount of garbage and solid waste in my country was estimated around like 3.65 million tons in a year annually. It's really a lot. So it means that in a day, our people, okay, 16 million populations produce around approximately 10,000 tons of garbage in a day. Yeah,
Wow.
and it's really a lot. Mostly it's from, I mean, like the most proportions of the waste come from Phnom Penh. Yeah, it's the capital city of Cambodia, so they produce like around 3,000 tons per day, and then other big cities. So it's mostly come from the big city. And for me, I also interested because like I know some informations like that. I also interested in waste management and like try to manage my lifestyles to not, I mean, like we do produce waste, but try to cut it down. We can try to cut it down, but the thing is that when I discuss about that with my, I mean, like with people I know or my friends, like some of them they don't really care about environment. They don't see it. Yeah, they don't see it as that much impact on our society, like to our generations in the next day. So they say that you just do it your own individual, and other people still continue to do it, so that does not solve the problem. And I think this is the problem because everyone don't see it as the impacts. Yeah, so I understand that I meet like some kind of problem like that. So how can you stay motivated like this? Yeah, how can you stay motivated? Have you ever meet some problem like this kind of problem the same?
Yeah, good question. And it's like I want to ask like everyone as well here as well. But first of all, I'm sorry that your friend didn't understand that. Like that's really hard, and also it's energy consuming, right? Like, and I think like it's important thing to remember is like we don't have to change everybody's mind to have social change. It's often said that like we want 3.5% of population actively engaging in the issue, and 3.5%, so like maybe 3 or 4 people per 100 people, and that's enough to change the society. This is like based on social science. So so if you can't convince your father, or if you can't convince your friend, that doesn't mean that you can't solve this, you know. And now it's because of the internet, we can connect it, we can be connected to people who don't live in your town or village. So definitely like keep looking for people who are interested in like your issue. And also if it's Cambodia, like if you're interested, I can help you like looking for somebody who would be interested in like waste management in like whatever you want to do this thing with, because like, you know, having like-minded people is so important, right? So just like, you know, if you're interested, contact me. I have some colleagues in Asia and I can ask around as well. But stay motivated, like I think like I can't easily go down because right now this is my full-time job, so like I'm not allowed to like not to be motivated. So I feel like really responsible because yeah, this is my my job. So when like a lot of people volunteer their time and do this, I actually getting paid to do this job, so I take it really seriously. But before doing this, I was an activist, and I was like many people here that I wasn't getting paid. And for me to stay motivated, I think one thing is to ask myself, like there are many things that I've done to stay motivated, and there are many times that I succeeded and also I failed. Like I never wanted to stop, but also there are times that I felt really sunk for like a while. we are doing something that any group of human beings like has never done. It's my English okay? I'm not sure. But
Yes, I
you
understand.
know, so when things doesn't go well, we tend to think, oh, I did do something wrong, or maybe why didn't go well. And good thing to remember, it's like we are so cool. We are doing something that people have never done. We've never faced this big global crisis, and we've never had anything that we have to work together with so many groups of people on this planet. And this is the first time we are fighting for everyone, not just one group of people or not certain liberation. We are fighting for everyone. And how cool is that? And how difficult is that? Of course, there are things that it doesn't go well. So like, I think that, but what I was going to say is, I try to remember what I want. Like, so I dare myself to imagine, you know, like sometimes like as a kid, we want something big and adults tell you that no, it's not gonna happen, it's too difficult. But just encouraging myself to like, you know, yeah, like something like world peace, something like a globe, like a planet with like a ecosystem completely like regenerated, all the animals coming back. Like, don't you want that? It's the kind of scary to want something big, something you really want, but try to connect with like, you know, what I really want, and that helps. And also be with people, be with like each other, like just to notice, oh, other people want something that I want as well, and really notice. And another thing is like just call your friend or you can call me too, and just sometimes we need to let it out, like, you know, oh my god, it didn't go well, like, you know, oh my god, I don't want to do this anymore. We need a space to be able to say that without like pulling each other down. So I think create a space, hey, like I just want to let it out, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to do this anymore, but I just need to show how I feel right now, something like that, and ask friends to listen to you for just a little while. Something like that helped me as well. But I would love to know how other people stay motivated as well. Yeah.
Yes, like for me, I think so you said that it is your job, so you have to stay motivated. But in terms of like environment issue, I think this is our responsibility to do it. Yes, because we born on our earth, so this is the place that give us birth. So why should we destroy the place that give us birth? Why should we destroy the place that we live? So this is our responsibility. I think that is how I do it, and I think it's really our responsibility to save the environment. I mean, to save the place that we live. The thing is that I don't want like our next generation, let's say our grandchildren, ask us like what did we do like 20 or 30 years ago that make this world so hot like nowadays. It's like really hard. I mean, I don't want the next generation to blame our generation. So I think this is like our responsibility to do it. But I still think like we need everyone, because like everyone take a part as the contributions, then we can really achieve it. Like you say, we have dream to we dream of world peace or anything, but we think that it is too big. Yeah, it is too big to reach. But actually, I think if everyone really understand about it and really are willing to do it, then there is a way. Yes. So do you
That's
have?
wonderful. Thank you for sharing it. That's really beautiful. Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah. So my next question is, what are some things that you suggest that we can do in our daily life?
Daily life.
Yeah, like what should we do like for environments?
I mean, this is not something that you can do daily, but I really highly recommend change your energy system. So it's easy, actually easy for many people. I don't think for everyone yet, but for most of us, it's easy to switch our electricity to renewables. So that is one of the biggest things that you can do, that I think that directly connected to your CO2 emission. And also, I think it's comes in numbers. So if you change, the government and also companies will know that renewable energy user is increasing, which is also another important thing. So that is something that I recommend. But also another thing is being part of some community, so that you can be with people who are thinking about climate change. For some of us, for many of us, this is an issue that it's hard to keep thinking and keep taking actions, which is more important than keep thinking, without, like, you know, friends, without people. So I think, and also the last thing would be, there are so many, but I'm gonna just stop with the next thing. The last thing is, like, if you are already part of any groups or with people who are interested in this and learning together, just push each other, encourage each other to take actions. So sometimes Japanese people are really good at learning the issue and keep studying, but study is there for you to take actions, and there are many actions that you can take without being an expert on an issue. So to just balance out, you know, like study something, take action, like you go this thing and decide to do something. It can be very small, just sign a petition or share the petition with your friends, but always like you kind of make a set. If you study, read a book, then connect that to action, always that bridge. Yeah, that is like really, I think it a lot needed in this climate community in Japan.
Wow, that's beautiful. Climate change is an issue that mentioned the global agenda, and also we can see in SDG 13, climate action, and also some international treaty, just such as the Paris Agreement and Kyoto Protocol. Still, we need more contribution from every individual to solve this problem, right? So how do you see the world in the next 30 years in terms of climate issue?
30 years? What? Can you say that again?
How do you see the world in the next 30 years? Like about the climate issue, just like from nowadays, the climate issue is still threatening Earth. And what do you see that in the next 30 years there will be a better place, or the world is still like destroying and destroying by the human actions? Please.
Okay, thank you. Marian, did you need to say something? You were trying to.
Yeah, I was just looking at the time and thinking we're going to have a final short discussion. And I'm wondering if you would like to join one of those sessions. I don't know if you can see on your screen that we've got 4 topics, well, 3 topics. But
Marian, should I answer then? Like,
yeah,
should I answer this quickly,
yeah,
and then we
yeah,
go to
and
that?
then go on to the discussion. That's
okay, cool.
Thanks.
So next 30 years, now 2020, right? I don't think about like 30 years because this is really urgent matter. What we have to see is like in 10 years, like 2030, we need to be cutting the emission of CO2 in half. And that is coming up in 10 years, that time limit. And what happens is, like, if we don't do anything, I think like we hear things like a lot of governments are trying to be green and different target and everything, but if we see that like CO2 graph, it's still going up. Of course, like, you know, because of Corona, COVID, it went down a little bit, but in general, it's going up. And if that continues around 2030, we are going to be in a point that human beings and entire planet will be facing irreversible catastrophic climate kind of how do you say that? Kikohokai. I forgot the word. Climate disaster. It's because
climate collapse, perhaps.
Yeah, climate collapse. So in 30 years, we'll know if we...
A tipping point, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if we, in 30 years, so that is like 2050, we will definitely know. But before that, we will know. Around 2030, if we could have done it or not, we will see. And so if we go over tipping point, like many people here already know that means the climate disaster, the number of climate disaster will increase, and the society will be very economically and politically very unstable. And also a lot of people cannot live in the place that they are living right now. And many people will die because of heat wave, which is already happening, but a lot more. All these things will happen and keep happening and increasing. Or we'll have the world where we get united behind this Paris Agreement and we are committed to save people's lives over somebody making a lot of money. So we will know around in 10 years. That's my guess. Not my guess, but that's like how I'm seeing this. So by 2050, we will be experiencing the success or failure by that time, I think.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Marian.
I
saw you.
Actually, I would like to point to everybody, something that Hinako said that I think is so important is talking about people who, how can you say, decision makers. And because we have only 10 years, there's a big movement in Japan to get more places to sign a climate emergency declaration. And so I shared in your resource paper, it's called Sylvia's Project, because a woman that I know who is living here decided that she wanted to contact her local government people. And there's a big movement to do this in many parts of Japan. And now we have about 38 areas where they decided there's a climate emergency, so we're going to take more action. And I think this is very important because these are the people who decide things. And then if the people in the local areas are getting really active, maybe the central government will do more, because next year they're going to have COP 26 next year, and Japan and other countries too, of course, have to give a bigger promise. And that's when we get system change, if they really, really make these changes. So I want to recommend everyone to look at that. And one more thing I want to say, because when I talked with Hinako about coming today, I said, I always found as a teacher, it's so good to have guests coming. And for students, it's really motivating. And Hinako said, you know, there are a lot of people active with 350 or the Fridays for Future Young People's Movement. And some of these kids are quite bilingual, and they would be very happy to come, even in Japanese or in English, that if people are interested in having a guest speaker, that, you know, between Hinako and I, certainly we can certainly introduce some people. And, you know, because we're doing all this online, we have to do it online. It's kind of a positive thing, because it's easy for somebody to spend half an hour, you know, to do, to make a speech. But if somebody says, oh, you know, Matsuyama, that's really far, I'd have to fly and it would take a long time to get there. And that is not possible. So I want to, you know, spread this idea that we can, you know, talk to people like this online. And maybe Hinako can also help, that if there are teachers who'd like to have somebody their own age especially come and talk and say, well, I'm doing this. Because if you hear from other people, same generation, then that's really positive, right? Hinako, it's so good. We could talk forever, I think. We set a discussion topic. Hinako, can you see on your screen? We've got 4 topics there, but actually we're only going to talk 3 of them. Can you see the voting screen? The questions are this: what areas should teachers be careful over in teaching climate? And the second one is, how can we encourage students to be active outside the classroom? And the third one is, how can we balance the pessimistic with more positive news to kind of avoid either people being destroyed by climate grief or being so optimistic that they say, oh, everything's okay, I don't need to do anything. So it's like, how do we keep that balance? So we have those 3 questions. And we're going to go into rooms for about 10 minutes to discuss that. I wonder which one you'd like to discuss. Talking about how teachers should be careful, how we should get students to be active, or how should we...
All of them are good. I would go to any of the group. I want to hear what people are talking about in this.
Okay,
yeah,
so
any group.
We'll ask Phil to put you in one of the rooms. I don't know, maybe... yeah.
Could we just discuss it as a group all together?
Oh, well, we could. But why don't we, everybody, and also if anybody else has another question to ask Hinako at this point, I want to say thank you very much to Dana and Srepin for giving us your questions.
Excellent.
And showing us how good it is to have a guest come and talk to students, because that's what I think we should be doing more. Great. Thank you both, and thank you everyone. And shall we go through these topics one by one then? And if anybody has something to say, why don't we? So which areas do you think that teachers should be careful over in teaching about climate issues? Are there things you shouldn't do? Are there things you should kind of be careful about? Who's got some ideas about that? Yes, Francis.
I think maybe everyone here is very committed, otherwise you wouldn't be here. But students aren't necessarily going to share our passions. And when I've been over enthusiastic, perhaps, I've noticed that students have drawn back a little bit. So I think we always have to kind of go gently, watch their faces, see if we're coming on too strong. And instead of unloading all our worries and action plans on them, we have to be a little bit more subtle and cunning and kind of catch their interest somehow. Because I have made this mistake in the past, and there are ways to get them interested, but you have to kind of, begin gently and not kind of scare them off the subject or make them feel depressed. And you know your students best. You will know the things, the entry points that will catch them. For me, it was with talking about fast fashion and what happens to all the clothes that are made for, sometimes 8 collections a year, and they are thrown away or they are burnt. And of course, making textiles uses a huge amount of water. Dyeing them can release a lot of harmful chemicals into the watercourses and so on. And if you get students who are interested in fashion to research this, you don't have to do the work. They come back and they tell the class how appalled they are about fast fashion. But that was for my students. I don't know if your students are interested in fashion or not. So, whatever interests your students.
You reminded me of a story that I heard from Chris Kozak, who's a pretty active guy in Tokyo. And he had a thing where it's a story about students who played, I think it was in Hamamatsu, and they got interested in climate issues because they were told that they couldn't have any basketball practice in the summer when it got so hot. And they went, oh, global warming means we can't do our baseball practice. And then they really started to care. So the thing that I think we should be careful about is I've met a lot of very enthusiastic people who say we have to give up eating meat. And hey, you know, that's a big thing to ask people. Of course, there is a point that producing meat is not good for the environment, but we need, I think, yeah, like you said, go gently there. And some people say, okay, have 1 day a week where you have less meat, or, you know, go slowly. Because if you start to insist that these are things you have to do, that's not going to go well with anybody.
I think the safest way to do it is to start from where the students are. What are your questions? What can you do? What do you care about? And get them to research and come to their conclusions. If you come with an agenda,
yeah,
you know, and a conclusion, it can really, I mean, nobody likes that.
I'm of time to time invited to give classes to university students. And what I try to do is try to point out that why we feel kind of like not in a crisis when the science shows us that we are in a crisis. For example, we have, I don't know how to say in English, seijose bias, meaning that we, like, according to scientists, we tend to think that things are okay. There are some studies around that. That's definitely happening in Japan because of lack of mass media information. That kind of thing, I just agree with them that I know that it doesn't feel like crisis. I got it. You know, like I communicate that I understand that even me, like I don't wake up feeling like, whoa, this is a crisis, because it's not right here, right now. So I think like when I relate it to how they feel there and show that I understand, then it's easy to communicate. But still, science shows that this is a crisis and it means this. Like, so I think like that has been a little bit effective in the past. Yeah, but I do find it very difficult to talk to students who are not interested in this subject, but who are there because they need to take this class or something like that. So that's one of the things that I tried and worked in the past.
I think like since Marian's mentioned about should we eat meat or not, yes. So I think like in terms of meat, if we compare like all meat like beef, pork, or chickens, like among like those three, I think beef is the heavy one that produce carbon footprint. So I think we should try to reduce it like really less and compare like chickens and pork compared to vegetable. I think like chicken and pork are produced like less, even they produce like carbon footprint, but it's still like less, a lot less like compared to beef. Then I think we still need meat, but it's just like we try to eat less meat, really less, like especially the beef one.
As an American, I ate a lot of beef before I came to Japan, and when I got married, my husband wanted me to cut the amount of meat down to no more than 100 grams per day. And that was a big change at first, but I'm used to that now. And I can't eat the big servings that I get in America anymore. So just cutting back, you know, your portion and just have a small portion makes a tremendous change.
But I think that the beef consumption still in the high levels since Muslim could not eat pork. So beef still is like a high demanding meat for them. And we all know that Muslim population is quite a lot as the compare as in the world population. So beef consumption still in a high level that we might not like reduce it in a large amount of number.
I think this should be depends on country. For example, in Cambodia, we eat like we eat meat like beef or pork like in claw, I guess. Yeah, but in Thailand, like if you go to the market, you will see it's like almost like every store like sell pork. They don't sell meat because of religious reason, I think. And also India, they don't really eat beef that much. I think it's also because of religious reasons. But for Muslim, they cannot eat pork. Yeah, so it's really depends on country, like the consumptions. But like for us, we think about environment, so we try to eat meat like beef like really less. Yes.
I just want to make one comment about I'm careful about teaching when I'm teaching climate issues or other global issues. I'm an American, and I'm really happy to criticize the American government, and I make my views explicit to the students and I explain why I feel that way. But I'm really, really hesitant to criticize the Japanese government because I'm not a Japanese citizen, and I feel I have to be really careful about that. And there are things I would like to talk about the lack of transparency in Japanese government and the clampdown on the media and how Fukushima just kind of disappeared from the news. But I'm really hesitant to do that. I'd like to hear what other people feel.
Yeah, I think I've been here long enough now that I don't feel quite as hesitant on that score. You know, I've paid my taxes for long enough. I'm paying for this country as well. So, but yeah, there's a sensitivity. So I think, David, if you're criticizing the American government and I criticize the British government, we're being good role models in that it's okay to criticize your own government. Yeah, but that's a really good point. If people feel, oh, this is Japan bashing, it's not going to make them very happy. I wonder if we could move on to the second one, was how to get students to be more active, because that's kind of, I used to in high school, I always wanted my students to to do some action. And the most I could do was I got them to go out once on a march about child labor. And even that they were very, very shy. So going outside and doing something, especially in Japan, I think it's very kind of big. But are there does anybody have any ideas about getting students to get involved in action? Hinako?
I think like yourself, I think you're already doing that by participating in this, but walk the talk. I think if teachers who are in some, I don't know the age group you teach, but a lot of times, even students show it or not, you are somehow role models or getting a lot of attention as an adult. And if you join the movement, if you are active and be joyful about it, I think like it opens up a little bit. I don't mention names, but there are some professors eager to have me come and eager to get them active, but themselves don't do much. And I think if you have close relationship with students, and if you see this something that, okay, teaching is not enough, I'm going to participate in this sure action this Friday, or do just like one part, even though it's smaller, it might look smaller contribution than you teaching. By the way, you teaching is incredible, like really powerful thing by itself already. But doing things that you want your student to do, you can just show that, like, it's easy to participate and it's fun. So I think that's one of the biggest things. And of course, sustainability is important. So you teaching itself is kind of max, and you can't take on anymore. I don't think I don't think at all that that's not enough. But I think they look at you, even though they don't show that to you, maybe,
I think I have some ideas. So I have a lot of Japanese friends and I study here, but there's only one friend who speak up like with me related to politic problem. And I think like Japan students, like they are trained not to speak up I think so, especially like in the class participation, even they know about that, but they don't speak up. Yeah, so I think we are a bit similar. Like if I compare Cambodia to Japan in terms of hierarchical society, so we live in a hierarchical society. So for example, like in my country, the young, I mean like young people cannot like speak against the older people. Okay, so if I actually we see they do wrong, but we cannot, I mean like we cannot challenge them and say that, oh, you what you do is wrong. So it's really not okay to correct their mistake. For example, like I used to correct like uh someone mistake when I was in high school. So I just a high school student, but he is I think he should be around like 30 years old. So he writes something wrong in Khmer. Yeah, so I just like try to correct him. I just said that it is wrong, and then after that my mother like scold me because I correct his mistakes. He said that I should not do that because he feel a bit offended. I think it's made me feel a bit offended for old people that young people like do that. So we are encouraged not to speak up like when we see like people do mistake. We are not encouraged like to challenge with old people. So I think this will like encourage us like just to stay calm and don't say anything even we see something wrong. But in Western society, I think in the classroom, like professor really encourage students to speak up and challenge with the professor. So since I used to study in international schools before, so it's I mean like I was encouraged to speak up, and I think this is the key. So it really depends on the professor whether they are encourage students to participate in the class like more. So they, for example, like in one of my class, like international relation class, so we have like more like 40% for participations in the class. So every student are encouraged to say something. Like at least they have to say something in a day, speak and ask questions with professor. So I think this really helpful because sometimes I really have no idea about that. But when I speak up, like I wonder about it. I have questions. So when professor say, I think there may be like something wrong with that problem that he said. So I try to challenge it. So it's improved the critical thinking. And I think this is really helpful. Yes, thank you.
Francis.
If you have a lot of energy, I recommend you invite a politician to one of your classes. I did this once and it was exhausting because he gave the excuse that he was busy and didn't want to come. I replied that in my country, politicians think that it's worth cultivating future voters. For example, President Bush at the time of 9/11 was actually in an elementary school classroom in a reading class, and he changed his mind and came to my class. It was a horrible experience because he insisted that we submitted all the questions in advance, and he didn't kind of answer the questions honestly. He tried to sort of make a political speech to the students. He couldn't speak English or didn't want to, so we actually did all this in Japanese, which was kind of quite relaxing for my students as well. And because it was an English class, we kind of did a sort of feedback session after to sort of cover the English side of it. But the students were fascinated to actually meet a politician, and they were disgusted that somebody who draws a salary, you know, from everybody's taxes in the country could sort of behave in such an arrogant and not exactly dishonest, but he wasn't willing to just meet the students and talk to them. He erected this barrier, you know, between them, and they generally, you know, were excited that, you know, a politician was coming to the class, and they were really disappointed, and they came to certain conclusions about this politician and his party. And it did happen because I'm in Tokyo. It happened to be a national politician, but I think you could do this perfectly successfully with a local politician as well. And, you know, it would be great if you could get a nice guest you know, is someone who will respond to your students' questions, but your students are mature. And even if you get not very nice politicians like I did, they will come to certain conclusions about the kind of political representatives they want, looking after their interests in the future. And it's a great social experience for them to meet a politician, because it isn't a tradition, it seems, in Japan that politicians have, you know, surgeries, regular, you know, meeting times and places for their constituents to come and talk to them about issues they care about. And I think it would be great if that did happen a bit more in Japan. And going back to what we sort of talked about earlier, you were talking about meat, but I read a very interesting article recently saying that governments and big companies have shifted the responsibility for climate change onto individuals, us as consumers. We can't do it all on our own. Governments have to change legislation. Big business has to change their way of doing business and stop putting profits above everything else. So I think it's really important that students come into contact with legislators. They have a right to, you know, their parents now and they in future will be paying the taxes to support these people. They need to meet them, and the legislators need to meet your students to understand your students' point of view. And, you know, what a lovely follow-up to, you know, if you've been talking about environmental issues in class, because it does hit Japan. You know, we keep having these floods in Japan that, you know, people are flooded out of their houses. Typhoons are, you know, increasing in severity and frequency. So climate change is relevant to Japan. So invite those politicians. It's fascinating.
Francis, you know, I love that idea because, you know, when you were talking, I thought, when you were telling what I discussed, I was assuming it was a national politician, because I think local politicians are a little bit closer to the people, and they don't have this quite such a high-handed kind of approach. But I love that idea, and that would be a wonderful way in different areas for teachers to ask politicians in their local area to come to their class. And a lot of these guys do speak. I've talked to some of them in Meguro, and I discovered that one of them I taught him when he was 4th grade. That was amazing. I checked his background, and he had been to this school in his elementary years, and I used to teach there. But that is a very, very nice idea to actually send to teachers to say, okay, you know, this could really connect with getting students interested and also getting politicians a little bit more alert about young people. Lovely idea. And you guys look at the time now. I think we have to look at the time, right, Linda?
Yes.
We can probably talk forever, and Hinako must be really tired.
I'm okay.
You're okay.
I have another meeting, so.
All right.
Well, this has been wonderful. And I just wanted to add that as the sea levels rise, Matsuyama, where I live, and Tokyo, where you live, they're going to all be underwater. So where are we going to go? Where are, you know, Singapore will be underwater. All these countries will be underwater. And it's happening now. So it's going to be our problem sooner rather than later. So we need to get our students to become aware of the issues. And
it is an important thing to be
about it.
Can we keep, I think people who need to go, feel free, because we said 4:30. If you need to go, just give us a wave, and, you know. Hinako, sorry.
Sorry, you live in Matsuyama?
Yes. Yes.
I'm like now supporting a group forming in Shikoku, like people in Ehime and Tokushima and Kagawa, the Kochi. So if you are interested, being connected to some groups, let me know. Or if you know any groups, like let me know.
Oh, I don't know any groups. So
what's that
anyway,
group
thank
called?
you.
Yeah, yes, please. Kochi groups, please.
What's it called, Hinako?
Right now we are calling 350 Shikoku and Chugoku, Chu Shikoku. But I want local people to come up with the name that is great for local people. But within 350, we are calling that because we have volunteers from all over Japan, like registering in 350 volunteer, which you are more than welcome to do. And we are starting a 350 AGO, like a group for people who wanna be active in English, because they may not speak Japanese or So I think that we need everyone. So I'm trying to create a space for anybody everywhere from Japan with whichever language that you speak to be able to be active and do something sharp to decrease the CO2 emission. So yeah, if you are interested, let me know. I'll leave my email I left, and also
You've left your email in the chat, and if anybody wants to have that right now, you need to write it down on a piece of paper because it will disappear. So please jot down her email if you want to contact her.
Anyone in Tochigi?
Tochigi, not yet, but you can be the first one. Or no group hasn't started actually, but I'm pretty sure that some people from Tochigi also registered. So if you can register here, it says 350 volunteer, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to join what 350 volunteers are doing now. Our mission is support anybody who wants to do anything to do with CO2 directly, like affecting CO2 emission, and to support them form a group or come up with a strong campaign or all sorts of things. And yeah, so I'm sometimes slow in responding to emails because I just get so many of them, but I will get to responding eventually. So please get in touch with me if you want to discuss what you can do as your group or even as individuals. Like I want to know how I can support. Yeah. And we do trainings and study groups and different things so that anybody can be a powerful activist,
Hinako, could I ask, do they have this group in Oita?
Oita wa, I know the Friday for Future Oita is up and running. I don't know how active it is right now, but I can connect you to that. If you want to start like 350 in Kyushu, you can totally start. But I think you may want to check out first if you like the Oita group and what they are doing. Yeah, if you're interested, I can connect to that.
Is it in Japanese or English?
I think that group is in Japanese, but in Kyushu there are Extinction Rebellion. There are some people who are doing that in English. If you want to get more information, maybe you may want to come to 350 AGO, like 350 English group, so that you can collect information or what you can do in Japan if you want to be more active in this.
Thank you. I will check about it.
Yeah, just email me and I respond, share the information. Yeah.
Thank you.
Linda?
Yes.
You're the boss.
Okay, well, we probably should bring this meeting to a close. It has been really a great meeting, and I just love how everyone has participated and shared different opinions and views. So thank you, everyone, for joining. And let's give a big hand to Marian and Dana and Sripin and Hinako. Thank you all for participating in this talk today.
Thank you, everybody, too. I really want to say thank you to Hinako for coming. I kind of twisted her arm and we had to fix the time so that she could come right after her training, and that was really special.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us.
That was wonderful.
It was really my pleasure. Thank you.
I hope that you'll all think some more about these issues and, you know, get in touch if there's something that you want to talk about. Oh, I meant to say at the end of that last thing, when you were A and B and C, that's how you would then move your students so they could work together. I think everybody gets that. So I just was interested to see how much we can make this online where the students can do more communicative things. You know, it doesn't just have to be on paper, that you can be doing some discussion using the breakout rooms. And I think it works. So thank you. And Phil, thank you so much for moving us around. Phil was telling me that from tomorrow they're going to change. They're going to change Zoom.
Update Zoom.
So it's going to be even easier. Is that right, Phil?
That's correct. Yeah, they're going to add all the new updates. The breakout rooms, you can choose to go to any breakout rooms you decide as a participant. So it is a game changer, as I like to call it. So a lot of students.
Wow.
A lot of
That's
people
incredible.
So
It starts tomorrow?
So
well,
update your Zoom tomorrow.
well, it's U.S. time, Pacific time, 10 a.m. So
Tuesday.
Oh my
So Tuesday.
God. Really game changer.
That's really great. I'm really happy to see everybody stayed the whole time. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being so involved and, you know, giving your opinions and everything. And keep in touch. Really.
And that's all for today. So we're going to close this meeting. So thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Click
Thank
your
you.
leave button. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye then. Thank you, Phil.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Marty, thank you for coming.
Bye. Fantastic.